Okay. All right.
Hi, everybody. You're at the Mysterious Bookshop site, if all is going well, which I have no way of knowing. I'm Otto Penzler, and I'm here to introduce two of the great iconic figures in the world of crime, espionage, thriller fiction. Jim Grady, who is at the bottom of my screen, perhaps on the bottom of your screen, it was a great journalist who worked with Jack Anderson back in the day in the 70s as an investigative reporter, and then started writing fiction and created one of the iconic figures in the world of espionage fiction, the nameless character known as the Condor. 1974, if memory serves, he wrote 6 Days of the Condor, and the next year, 75, if my memory of 74 is correct, the movie came out with Robert Redford, directed by Sidney Pollack. There have been other Condor short stories and books since then, and I think one of those books was dedicated to Robert Redford, who became so famous as the Condor. Jim is in conversation tonight with Stephen Hunter, who also began as a journalist, working for the Baltimore Sun, well, doing other things, but became well known as the writer of film criticism for the Sun for 15 years, and moved on from there to the Washington Post, where he won a Pulitzer Prize for his film criticism. He also was writing fiction at that time, and created one of the other great iconic figures. It's a word that people throw around rather casually, but in this case, it is totally well deserved. When he started writing about Bob Lee Swagger, known as the Nailer, which I just always loved as the best nickname ever for a sniper. The first book, Point of Impact, became a movie called Shooter. And so Steve has been a New York Times bestseller on many occasions since then, and we're proud to have him here. The Mysterious Press just published his new book called BASIL'S WAR. Today is publication date, and we're celebrating by having an event for everybody out there who's tuned in today. I'm looking at Basil St. Florian as the new Stephen Hunter iconic figure. He's the James Bond of World War II. He made his debut in a short story called Casey at the Bat, and now appears in Basil's War, which has had starred reviews in Publishers Weekly and on Kirkus and Booklist, and has a fabulous reviews everywhere else. So now Jim and Steve know each other, they're friends, and they're both iconic figures in the world of mystery fiction, crime fiction, thriller fiction, espionage fiction, and they're going to be in conversation, and I will be here quietly on the side of the screen, listening to what they have to say and ready to handle any technological problems that may occur.
I just wanted to ask real fast, Otto, what time does the bar open?
It's open now. I'm leaving. I'll see you later. Good luck.
Well, we also, Otto, you can't forget that you're an iconic figure as a chronicler, as a bookstore owner. You know, you're Otto. You're the one who got Steve and I here. So, hats off to you. Hats off to you.
Well,
Otto is the
I'm
best.
too humble to say it. You know,
Otto is the best.
Yeah, and well,
rude of me to disagree with my guest.
but speaking of best, I think readers of Steve Hunter are gonna be absolutely floored and in love with Basil's War. I think one of the things that, and I'm trying not to speak like to you in third person, Steve, but come on, you know, I got to do a little of that. This is one of what I always like to call your bonus novel. You've got the great Nailer series, but then you've got a large number of other non-Naylor novels, and this shines out there with the rest of them. I think we've heard a little bit about it, but do you want to give a fast synopsis, or before I like shower you with praise and bubble, or
Break in any time with praise, Jim. You know, I'm a total addictee to praise. Anyway, yeah, this in fact I created him, or he knocked the door and kicked his way into the room about 10, maybe 15 years ago. And what this process illustrates is something you'll be familiar with, Jim, and any writer will know, is that the principle that stories beget stories. You write a story because you're looking for answers. But when you're done with the story, maybe you've found those answers, but you've also found a whole lot of new questions. And the only way you can answer those questions is to write another story, and on it goes. And so Basil has appeared now. This will be his third iteration. He's actually appearing yet again in a novel that I'm now working on that'll be published not shortly, but eventually, called The Bullet Garden, that I'm very, very proud of and very excited about. And I'm hoping even for more of Otto. I'm sorry, I always have more of Otto, but I'm hoping for more of Basil. I love the voice. I love the character. I love the wisecracks. I love the drinking. The uniforms. The British had such great uniforms. They were so much better than our uniforms. So I love the uniforms. The shoes, they had such fabulous. Anyway, he is fun. He is a great guy to hang out with, and I'm lucky to be able to do that.
And I think you hit on one of the things that I loved about the book is the fun quotient. And one of the things, yes, okay, ticking clock suspense, great action, lots of quick turns, and lots of really good background, but the fun just gets you from the get-go. And one of the things that really struck me about your book, and that makes it even more fun, is you create this character and this story in such a way that the reader feels like he's inside a great classic espionage movie made circa 1944, with you capture the milieu of those movies, the way that the people were perceived to talk. You take all the cliches of that and then flip them and put new life into them. And it's every now and then the readers are going to, well, not every now and then, the readers are going to see you do this wonderful little sly thing that just is, it's 8 words of dialogue, but it recognizes that this is the kind of prose readers are not used to reading, in the 21st century. But you make it fresh. And that was, wow, that was, I kept wanting to call you up at that point when I was reading and say, oh my God, this is where your years of being a Pulitzer Prize winning movie critic and fan comes completely into play. And it again, this is a new kind of cinematic writing. Yes, thrilling. Yes, action. Yes, mystery. Great characters, but the prose and the approach. Talk a little bit about what made you do this. And I feel like I'm waving my hands in excitement too much.
It's really not set in history. It's set in movies. It's extremely informed by movies. Some movies I've never seen. It's movies I feel, movies that have crept into my subconscious. It's a sort of the movieization of my brain is what it is. And the book wouldn't exist without a sort of, had I not written it while looking through a lens. And I was very conscious of its cinematic aspects. And I was very conscious of, the language. I love British movies. I love British language. I have such fun with it. I think any Brit will think, well, I think he rather overdoes it. And perhaps I do, but overdoing it is more fun than underdoing it. And maybe there's a few too many say old mans in there, but it was just such, it felt so good. And I am forever endowed. I am forever in debt to Otto for giving me this chance to sort of go back. I wanted to go back to this world, and it can't. I've been stuck in modern America. I've been stuck with cell phones and satellites and the mother blinking internet and all that stuff. And it was so nice to go back to a time when the telephones were black and had dials, and everybody smokes, cigarettes were the secret fuel of World War II. and people are wearing Burberry overcoats or little tin helmets, like the British War, SS uniforms and things like that. And you will feel, even if you can't identify them, and maybe even I can't identify them, you'll feel the play of movie iconography, of movie pleasure, of movie gambits, of movie style dialogue. I hope movie wit. It's sort of in the DNA structure of the story, and again, it's not a conscious thing that you can press a button and say, this is going to happen. It just evidently appears when you believe in it hard enough, and it somehow comes out of your 8-year-old memory of seeing The Third Man. That is when you were 8, not 8 years ago. The Third Man for the first time, and what an overwhelming experience that was, and how that sort of informed the writing without being formally ordered, without formally ordering. You can tell I'm a writer, not a speaker. Without formally ordering it to do so, it just did it on its own.
And the sort of naturalness that you're talking about comes through in the way that it's just there. There's never a sense of forced prose. There's never a sense of sentences planned for effect, like you'll see certain authors do. It allows you to be in it. And I think it's going to be really thrilling for a lot of your readers who have not had the extensive background in cinema and movies that you have, because it's like stumbling into a dark theater and, oh my God, I didn't know this movie was going to be this good. It's like I'm going to be curious to hear from like readers who are under 30, and I think you're going to get a bunch of them with this, who are just utterly charmed by that world. I mean, you give them a new world without going, here's how tall it is, here's how wide it is. You just let them experience it, and that is so cool. That is so cool.
Well, thank you so much. I'm humbled by your prose, or by your praise. I'm also humbled by your prose. But let me ask you a question. Do we have to have Otto in here? I mean, I think you and I would be much bigger and better looking. We could dump the scene of Otto.
Besides, Otto's always a presence in everything we do anyway. It's just, and
you gotta love Otto, but it's fun to pick on someone. That's what we do. We're grown-ups. There's all
2 of us and 1 of him, Steve.
To answer your question, as if I remember it, I went through my little Otto routine there. I hope I can get young people interested in it, not for the, because it's a powerful market demographic. I didn't know anything about that stuff. But the one thing I would hope that it could do is, if it's any kind of success at all, is get people to look at the books of Eric Ambler and get people to look at the books of John le Carré and get people who maybe they'll even read The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad.
Yep.
And certainly I hope they'll see or get them to read The Entertainments of Graham Greene.
Yes.
He was an interesting, I think he wrote much better when he told himself this is an entertainment, because then he didn't have the pressure on himself to be great, and he became great.
Right.
But I hope I can, I hope in that sense it's somewhat of a didactic experience. It's a teaching, a learning, a showing experience, and maybe, we just can get some old books read. And the best thing in life is old books being read for the first time and learning how new they really are and how they've stayed new in 100 years. So for 100 years, one of the funny things about all this is that the movie The Third Man is based on a screenplay, but in order to get the third man to write the screenplay writer, who was Graham Greene, had to write a novel first and then pretend that he was adopting a novel. So he wrote the novel, then he wrote the screenplay, then the great director, Sir Carol Reed, and the great actors Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten and Trevor Howard took over, the great city of Vienna took over, and they made it a masterpiece. The book, frankly, kind of sucks. I mean, it's not one of Greene's greater works. It's kind of mediocre. So I'm not telling people to go out and read that book, but they should see those kinds of movies. And, I'm a conservative, and what that means at its most basic is conserve, respect, appreciate what's come before you. And in that sense, this book is an anthem to conserving some of the great stylistics and psychologicals of the past.
And one of the things I want to thank you for is that you do in a completely plot appropriate way. You mention Eric Ambler. You mention some of the other great Somerset Maugham. You mention a lot of great authors, and for a modern reader who's fallen in love with your book, it's like saying, oh, yeah, but there's some other people you might want to try and hang out with too.
Excuse me. I know I said I would shut up, and I really want to. It's so hard for me to not say what I want to say, which is that Basil's War is a classic book from another era, except it was just written. It's like a movie, like a 21st century movie from 1944. But it's an Eric Ambler novel. It's a Graham Greene novel. It's all of the things that we love about the great old-fashioned books, which this is, although it's very modern and contemporary. But it has all of the things that we love about those old books. And now I'll stay quiet again. I'm sorry.
And thank you, Otto. But it also,
it's a relic from another age, is because I'm a relic from another age. I'm about 140 years old, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe it's only 130. But I was formatted in the 1950s. And no matter what happens in the world, in reality, in my personal life, in my private life, and any other sort of life I might have, I'll always be a 50s guy. I'll always be worried about invaders from Mars and commies sneaking in under the barbed wire. And I still think John Wayne is really cool, and I can't get away from that. And I've lasted so long that people now find that, oh, isn't that charming? No, it's not charming at all. This crazy guy believes all this stuff. He's not putting it on. He thinks that's what it is. So that's why it's that way more than any conscious decision. It's that way because I'm that way.
Well, but any good prose reflects the better parts of an author. That's why a lot of great books are written by assholes. But but I want to go back to the idea of actually Basil's War being a modern novel. I want to say, contained in this great classical thing. Your action is modern. It is cinematic. It is quick. It is you're 1 minute everything is going fine, and then Basil turns a corner and has to come up with something else. I mean, that's one of the great things about it is he doesn't have a jetpack to get him out of a tight situation, or he didn't get a whole, I guess, briefcase that unfolds into a massive arsenal. He's got essentially his wits and his ways, and that's it. Really, from the get-go, and that's one of the things that makes the book really fun, because you see the guy. He's not James Bond. He's as good as James Bond should be, but you also feel, oh yeah, if I'd have had that thought, or if I'd have known not to steal that guy's documents instead of this one's, I could have gotten to Paris too. It just is. That's the modernity and the ability for the reader to empathize are really key to this book.
Thank you so much. I had, we all play little narrative tricks. We have, not at every chapter, but about every 5th chapter, any thriller writer will put in a hook. That is something that ratchets up the stakes, something that makes the story a little bit tenser, something that brings in a new dimension or a new direction, a new opponent, a new situation. When I was dealing with this at the very, most basic level of narrative construction, I thought it would be kind of amusing to see if, instead of coming up with a hook once every 5 chapters, if I could come up with a hook every single chapter. And that was pretty much what I tried to do. And believe me, I don't consider myself a particularly gifted plotter. I always have thought that's the weakest part of my game. But the material was very cooperative. It kept creating places where I could do that little, game from Eric Ambler, that little hook, that little, if you will, goose to get you, well, okay, let's read one more chapter and find out, oh my goodness, well, now we have to read another chapter, that'll make the time fly away. And I was very conscious of that as a technique. And of course, like any technique, I warned whether I was overdoing it. And I'm not sure if I got it in every single one, but I think I'm something of like 40 chapters. I think I got it at least 36 or 37 times. So
38.
I like
38.
the game parts of it. I love the game parts of it, and I've had and playing this game was great fun.
Yeah, and I got to say, and probably this is just because I'm a male who loves movies. When you start with a sex scene involving Vivian Leigh, and that later also works into the plot in other interesting ways, you have somebody hooked on that book for 4 chapters just with that.
Yeah.
Just with that. And by the time they get to the end of chapter 4, they've forgotten about her. They're concerned about Basil and what the hell's going on there. So when you did that, I put the book down and laughed, and then I put that up again.
Yeah.
It was great. And let's talk a little bit about how you use history here. This is people, I think, do not have enough of a sense of World War II.
I agree on that very much.
And one of the things that you do is you bring that to life. But you talk a lot about, or talk a little, if you will, about how you use the history, most of which is not that well known. And, you know, this is sort of a true story in many ways. I mean, I know some of those things were true. And I just want to, could you talk a little bit about World War II and how you use that in 21st century fiction?
Well, I begin with the idea that I have a deep and abiding passion for World War II. As I said, a 50s kid. And in the 50s, World War II penetrated society to the smallest degree. Everything, virtually every book published, every movie made, every comedy routine had it somehow. It had an echo or a connection with, and we know, with the war. And people were always referring to the war, and they didn't have to be more specific. Now you have to say World War II. But in 1953 or 58 or 62, the war was the great one, 1939 to 1945. And I absorbed it through novels, and I absorbed it through popular culture. And it was my discovery of that part of popular culture that really sort of generated the individual I became. And I absorbed a great deal of information. I was so moved by so many of the stories of heroism and survival and good and evil. And it always has remained extremely dramatic in my mind. It still is. I should tell you, right now I'm working on a novel that may in turn out eventually to be more than 1,000 pages long, called The Bullet Garden, which is set in World War II.
Otto just grabbed his heart like this when you said it.
Well, this is still a couple of years away, unfortunately. But it's again, I mean, I thought, now what can I say? It feels like home to me. You can't go home again. Well, I can. I did. You know, it's like going back to my childhood and the enthusiasms and the experiences and the education and the provocation and the stimulation that all of us who were in the 50s and were in some way, shape, or form the product of the war. I'm of the baby boom generation, and the baby boom happened because all the men were at war. They came home, and boom, there were babies. And so it's never been far from my mind, and it's never been far from my pen. And I've always wanted to get back to it. And as I've gotten older, I've just decided that's where I want to go. And Otto it's given me all these chances to get there. And I've just found the journey that Otto allowed me to take extremely provocative. You know, here's what we do. We sell, you and I, professionally, we sell little charges of electricity in our brain. And those are when our imagination is stimulated. If we don't get that, we're out of luck. I mean, we're burnt out, used up cases. But as long as we're getting that little spark up there, we can do our work. And World War II for me has just provided an amplitude, a universe of sparks. There's just so many stories I could tell. I still want to do Pacific. I've done a Russian front story. Now I'm doing European theater. I still hope to figure out a way in the time I have left to do a Pacific World War II, something against the Japanese. I've touched on it, but I haven't done it in any peculiar way. And see, what's so interesting about it to me also is it's got to be more than action. You know, the action you get on TV is so brilliant now. You know, if you watch the Steven Spielberg or you go to YouTube and quest T-34 versus Stukas, you'll get a 7-minute animated movie with a Stuka versus a T-34, and it's such technical accuracy, and the action is so unbelievably convincing. You can't sell as a prose writer action really much anymore, because you've got to offer something more. You've got to offer intrigue. You've got to offer insight into that, into that action, not just what happens, but why it happens and how it happens, and why the culture determined that happens as opposed to other things. I mean, it's just like you have to react to all the pictoriography out there. When Norman Mailer's writing The Naked and the Dead, or Irwin Shaw is writing The Young Lions, nobody really had any idea what war looked like. Now I push a button and I'm in the middle of the Battle of Kursk and an incredibly detailed work of it. So I've got to, and you've got to, and he's got to sell books that offer more psychological, intellectual, imaginative penetration, offer more than spectacle. We can't compete on spectacle.
And that's one of the things that Basil's War does. I mean, you're in the midst of what is, of course, a natural sounding conversation from the era, but Basil always takes it on a turn that reveals something else, not just necessarily about the plot, but about his character, about his past, or about the people around him. And I mean, one of the things is every now and then Basil is sarcastic, but you play it straight. And by doing that, instead of having everybody react to it theatrically, let me say, you let the reader appreciate it even more and be in on the joke. Instead of witnessing the joke, you make the reader be in the joke with you. And that is one of those very simple things that you can spend 35 years as a professional author learning how to do once. And you do it maybe. You do it maybe.
That book 5 years ago was so damn good. I can't do it now. I know absolutely what you're saying. One of the things that I had to do in this iteration of a Basil story was I had to make him deeper. I had to suggest, he had a very attractive, charming insouciance to him. He's clever with a quip. He's good with women. He seems very, as people have said, James Bond-like. But he's not James Bond, because there is some actual pain and some self-loathing. Yes. And clearly his insouciance is all this is. It's a kind of a shellac to what is basically a very damaged individual. And you don't want it to turn lugubrious, but you want him to be, you don't want him so idealized that he's a parody. And again, one can only try. One of the things I tried to do was try and make him, this sounds so preposterous and creative writing class like, but somehow you've got to find a way to make him deeper. You've got to present without writing essays. You've got to find a way of dramatizing the sometimes cruel forces that created him, and let him be cruel and yet have regrets about the cruelty that he has to be.
Yeah, and you manage to do that as you're moving the reader through a breakneck plot. I mean, it starts very slowly in the arms of Vivian Leigh. I had to just say that again. And from there, the next thing, you are on a train and eventually a plane, and then another train, and you're in Paris, and you're trying to keep up, and you can, but it's every moment is like it's like walking through the streets of Paris if you've never been there, and turning blocks and seeing entirely different things. That's one of the things. One of the things I liked about the book is you showed the sophistication of the war effort in a new way, in the way between the sort of competitive competition between the German Gestapo and the Abwehr, their army. You show how that, yes, there was a French resistance, but a lot of people were just trying to stay alive in the government that was on top. And all that comes through smoothly. And it's just, it makes it better than the kind of films of those era where every Frenchman was a resistance fighter and all the Nazis were one way. And all, you got sophistication going on there, dude. Multiple layers of it.
Hey, well, thank you so much. And again, it was something that that has more to do with I worked in offices for 38 years, and I know that there's no more treacherous jungle than an office. And I know that every entity has an office. And so I try and bring the dynamics of the Baltimore Sunday Sun in 1974 to the, Gestapo in the Paris of 1943. And the reason for that is that I know that there will be the same factions no matter where you are. There'll always be factions. There will always be plots and counterplots. There will always be people who work hard and hate the people who don't work hard. There will also be people who don't work hard and scramble to keep their laziness hidden. They're like secret agents, secret agents from LAZY, the famous intelligence agency, LAZY. And, to try and capture what you might call a reasonable facsimile of human behavior, against which all of this other more fun stuff plays, is just been, again, that was one of the ideas of the book. That was one of the things I tried to do. One of the things that's so great about talking to you is you're such a good reader, and you get everything I'm trying. You read on multiple levels, and you get what's going on in a way that lots of people are incapable of doing. None of the people who buy this book, of course, but the others. Anyway, they're able to. So talking with you is such a great charge for me.
Well, and for me with you too, because it's like this is the experience, this craft, this ride. We've only given our whole darn lives.
Yes, right.
And
it's trifle. It's only my whole freaking life.
Yep. And we got lucky to be able to bring that experience out into the public, in part through guys like Otto Penzler.
We are very lucky, and I run into people all the time who are so saddened because they wanted so badly to do what we do. And so we shouldn't take it for granted, because for every one of us, there's 1,000 failures who just couldn't quite get over the hump. And my heart breaks for them. I never know what to say to them, but it's a thing that many, many, many people want to do. I mean, clearly man is a storytelling animal, and it's as natural as sex, the telling of stories. And to do it at a level that someone will pay you to do so is
that sex or is that storytelling?
Is what?
Never mind. I made a bad and off-color joke, so we'll just keep going.
Oh, okay. I do that all the time.
Anyway, but the thing that your readers are going to love about this is you bring all that artistry and that literally, decades of learning on to decide whether or not to say the red car or the crimson car to every line of this prose, but you don't make a big deal of it. It seems effortless. It seems natural, and I that's one of the things that your fellow authors love about you is that, like, oh yeah, he made me feel like I was running down like I was in Whitehall.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've never even been inside Whitehall except through fiction, and yours makes me feel like I was there, And I love that you use the historical signposts, if you will, to help the reader remember where he is. Winston Churchill, and this great use of Alan Turing, who's one of those amazing characters in history.
Oh yeah, great man, no doubt.
The more you learn about this guy, and I think there was even a movie about him, but the more you learn about him, the more interesting he is. And you showed a humanity of him, and you showed how a man who's probably 3 times smarter than any of us on our best day would think and act and talk and be human like the reader. And that's great.
Well, I'm trying to make him not a figure, but a character. And there's a difference. There's a difference there. And if you asked me to define it, I couldn't. I will say that you just, you have to somehow, and again, this sounds so pretentious, but you have to feel them. I mean, there are just certain characters that they'll never work unless somehow, I don't know, you have trouble birthing them, and they obsess you, and you feel them emotionally in a way, and you can get that. I mean, there are other figures. I mean, one of the things we're always doing in these kinds of books, or any kind of book really, is we have characters of emotion and characters that I call of administration. You have to have a policeman directing traffic. You don't have to know where he was born or anything like that. He just has to be there to direct the traffic. But you have to also have someone who's trying to get away from someone else, and you feel his fear and his terror. And when he sees the policeman and the policeman says, "No, go," that's virtually a sentence of death, or so he thinks. So you've always got to be cognizant of who you're entering, who you're creating, whose emotional landscape you're evoking, and who is just there to make the plot work. And getting that, sort of making those calculations, that's what we do. I mean, theoretically, we know what we're doing, but sometimes it takes 3 or 4 cracks to get it right.
Oh, sure. And what I think that many of the readers of Basil's War are not going to, most of them will, but some of them will not understand just how much effort, because you make the prose look easy and simple, but how much effort you put into it to actually become all those things and let them come out, onto a screen and eventually onto paper. It is just that's one of the reasons that Basil's War works, is you make it seem as natural as the wind outside. And that, wow. I mean, hats off to you if I had a hat, but that's why we read every Steve Hunter book, So
thanks again. It's again, you're making me feel like I knew what I was doing.
No, I completely believe you. There is an unconscious energy and synergy and expression, not an effort, an expression that comes through Basil's War and through I would say any good writing. You know, we could whatever great book the reader of Basil's War has in his heart, besides the Steve Hunter or James Grady novel, will have in it that same thusness, its own natural sense of life and existence, and that comes through in Basil's War. You've got it there, and so that's one of the things that the readers are going to love. If not, we'll have to just ring their doorbell.
Well, you're right.
Oops, I slid back into a bad time in my you know.
The one thing I do want to make clear, and I've already run into this to some degree, is some people are going to be disappointed because, hello, it's not Bob Lee Swagger. Now, there's not a rifle on the front. There's a British airplane. There's no mention of rifles or guns anywhere in the physical copy of the book. A total of 3 shots are fired from very small caliber pistols that are just described in brief. And yet still some people get about 30 pages into it and say, where's Bob Lee Swagger? Is he gonna take a time machine down into this here ruckus here? And I just want to make it clear, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a Bob Lee Swagger book. You're going to get a lot of swagger up ahead. Your need for swagger will be fulfilled. That I promise you. But I decided on this one not to go. It's not that I was tired of him, at least not consciously tired of him. It's more that I've always had this secret belief that I was switched at birth with the 3rd Earl of Bedford of Gloucester-on-Thames, and that's who I was supposed to be instead of little Stevie Hunter of Northfield, Illinois. And so this is my way of expressing my fantasy Englishness. You know, I wanted to be George Sanders. I wanted to be Claude Rains. I wanted to be all those extraordinary. I wanted to be Ashley Wilkes. I wanted to know Vivian Leigh, for God's sake.
Well, it's
Can I not meet this woman? Why is this so impossible? Even though she's been dead for 60 years, I must meet this woman.
Well, but the great thing is, amidst in all this sophistication, I want to hit on 2 points here. One, little Stevie Hunter from Northfield, Illinois, is on every page of this book, loving it. And that energy and appreciation. I mean, I always thought Thomas Wolfe was completely wrong. He said, you can't go home again. I don't think you can ever really leave.
No, that's a very good point. That's an excellent.
And that's one of the things that allows you to then go to London before you were, you know, in diapers, no, but before you were born. Yeah. And to do that. And the other thing is, readers of Steve Hunter who've read, you know, at least, let's say 2 of your books, they know you are capable of so much more than just portraying the nailer looking for his spot to find his target and drop him. And it is, I think, for a Bob Lee, and I thank God for the millions of Bob Lee Swagger fans. I'm one of them. I appreciate them. But what
educating my children.
What happens with a Steve Hunter book like Basil's War is that you get to feel the comfortable familiarity of the prose, and you're going to get a great story that's going to surprise you 9 or 10 times, maybe 11. And you know that. So while you might be missing Bob Lee in this one, It doesn't matter. You know that he's part of the crew that's coming out of the guy whose name is on this book, and that name is Stephen Hunter. So, you know, I think Bob Lee Swigert fans will actually pick this book up and feel really happy that they did. You know,
Well, I certainly hope so, and I believe that. I believe that to be true as well. I mean, whatever else the prose is consistent, not because I make it consistent, but because I have no choice but to write the way I write, and that's, you know, as I say, and as you know, that's what we do. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I do it. I don't know any other way to do it.
And you did a great job here. You know, I mean, it was we're talking about that, and one of the things that I love hearing in your voice as we're doing this, and occasionally seeing a smile on Otto's face, is that the fun that you had creating this wonderful character and absorbing him into the milieu of real life history, that just comes through. You know, I keep coming back to if you know, if any of you out there who are watching this would say to me, you know, well, is this, how would you describe this book? Is it scary? Is it thrilling? And it was, yeah, it's thrilling. Yeah, it's got suspense. Yeah, it's got really cool action and trade craft. But the thing that I kept coming back to, that I told my wife about, was it was fun. This is a fun read. And in a world like we're in today, whatever you think about it, and all the, to be able to have a fun book gives you what we you know, more than escapism, because this takes you into real human issues, but it does so with fun. You know, it just that was that, you know. So don't you know, it's just that's a essence that is in the book, and I think is going to continue for the future Basil stories. I mean, you're not going to be able. It's like, I know you got Bob the Nailers chasing you around the room now. In addition to him, there's a guy with every lap you're doing raising a whiskey to you and saying, "I'm Basil. I'm still here." You know, it's. I think it's really, you're entering a new and exciting period as an author, and it's kind of joyous.
Well, thank you so much. Yes to everything you say. I do. I'm going to spend the rest of my life on Bob and Basil, and I think that it's a yes. Again, I just thank whoever arranged this, because it's so excited about what's coming next. I mean, I just to be my age and excited, more excited really than I've ever been in my life about the possibilities of the future is a grand position to be in. And you know, I'm not the kind who looks back. I only look forward. And more than at any time in my life, the things that are before me are immensely pleasing. They are immensely full of stimulation, provocation. It's going to be a party from here on. And
we get to come along. You know, all of your readers get to come along on that party.
They're invited.
You know, and it's just
what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, and you know, that sense of forward motion. This is not a historical novel. You know, I mean, yes, I could argue that for about 2 minutes, and then but it is a novel that takes the reader forward, and even though he doesn't know where he's going, he has a sense of the forward times from which his own life springs, and that's really cool.
Okay, I have to interrupt at this point. We're getting almost out of time. There's a couple of things I wanted to say about Basil's War. the trade reviews, not reviews that average readers get to see, where they read the Washington Post or the New York Times or something, but Publishers Weekly and Kirkus and Booklist, which are written for librarians and booksellers. The starred reviews, which is the highest praise that a reviewer can give to a book. I have to say, I've been in publishing for 45 years, and I've never seen somebody so many reviews that said, let's hope there's another Basil book, or we expect another Basil book, readers will want another Basil book. It's what they all say, because this character is so lovable, and I don't mean it in a cuddly little teddy bear kind of way. I mean, he's just a fascinating character, and as the party goes along with Basil, I want to be part of that party, Steve. Don't you forget.
Thank you. And let me just say also, being with Jim Grady has been fabulous. This is a great American writer who's had a fantastic career, and who, as you mentioned earlier, let's not leave this out. He created a great character that will be with us forever. Long live, let's see, what can we do? Maybe Bob Lee and the Condor versus
Godzilla.
How would that be? I like that one. That would be fun.
And that one we would get a deal on from Hollywood in a heartbeat. We change a few things, but yeah. And that's the other thing I think that, Otto, you should be aware of. I would bet, given the initial reception that the book has been getting in the trade publications, the starred reviews, and what I assume is some pre-order bliss. As Hollywood opens up, this could be a movie.
It should be.
And
there is no reason why this could not be a terrific 1944 movie.
Right. Oh,
Hawkins and all of those people, or if there were anybody similar to it. But I will say, although you said, well, it's not a historical novel, today on the Amazon, if you'll excuse the expression, Amazon site, it was #1 for historical mysteries.
That is so cool.
Selling book.
Now everybody has to go and order it from Mysterious Bookshop, because
and I hope you will. Of course, we're a bookshop, so we hope you order books from us. But really, buy the book from an independent bookseller.
Yeah,
they need your business. Please give them your business. We love Amazon because they sell a lot of books, but we love our independent bookstores more. I want to thank both of you so much for being here tonight. This was just great. I mean, the hour went by so fast. I had to look up at the clock and say, "Oh my goodness, we have to go." We said an hour, and we're at an hour, and it was just wonderful. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
This was my honor.
Thank you, and Steve, thank you for letting Mysterious Press publish this fabulous book.
I know this whole thing happened because of VU, and I'm deeply, deeply, deeply appreciative.
I hope we're going to be holding hands, walking down the lane together for a while. Thank you both.
Flower boy.
Good night, and thank you all for listening in. If you're out there, there's no way for me to know that. I'm sure somebody could tell by looking at this screen with all the little things, but I know that some of you are out there, and thank you for joining us tonight. And get a copy of this great book. I think you'll be really happy that you did. Thank you very much. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, I'm pressing the little button here that says end broadcast, but I still see you guys. Now, it's very possible that nobody else can see us, but let's not take the chance.
I'm going to try and push a button too.
It does say here where everyone can see and hear you. About I'll go to stop cam. Would that be something?
Well, that just got rid of Jim.
Well,
There you go. Now, how do I get rid of me? Oh my God, I have no idea. This technology stuff.
Where's Charles?
Charles left an hour ago.
Oh, okay. There you go.
How to end broadcast. There's a little screen here that says end broadcast, and I keep hitting it. So I'm assuming